Well, it's blowing so hard. The gust must be about 70, 80 miles an hour. Bobby is a real cut-up. I don't know if anyone has ever worked with Bobby that's here, but all of a sudden, Bobby cuts the biggest fart you've ever heard, and in front of the Wrangler's hat just blew off at the same time like this. And Bobby says, "God darn it, blew his bloody brains out."
Our next guest is somebody who has worked with John Wayne, but he's also done many great Westerns that I know you'll remember. His name is Paul Koslo, and he worked with the Duke in Rooster Cogburn. Paul, come on out. Welcome, good to see you.
Good to see you first time.
When you first met Duke, what was it like?
My first impression of the Duke was the first morning of shooting, where the Duke and Katharine Hepburn were over there like maybe 50 feet away, and all the bad guys were over here in a shade tent where you would eat lunch. And the director and Hal Wallace and Katharine Hepburn and the Duke and their entourage came over. They wanted to introduce Duke and Katharine to all the bad guys. And so it came my turn to meet him. And he said, "What part you playing, kid?" And I said, my character's name was Luke, so I told him, I said, "Well, I'm playing Luke the Duke." He says, "No, you're not. You're playing Luke the Puke. There's only one Duke around here." I said, "It's a joke. It was a joke." And yeah, that was my first impression. I used to bring my guitar with me to the sets and stuff, and his grandkids played music, and so when we had downtime, we would play guitar and stuff. And so that night, that first day, we were at I think we were in Bend or Grants Pass shooting, and some of the Wranglers and some of the bad guys, we were having dinner, and he came in, and I didn't know that. And all of a sudden, I feel this slap on my back. I still have the fingerprints right here. And he looks down and said, "Anybody my grandkids like can't be all bad," like this. And he just kept on walking. And I go, "Oh my goodness."
That's a great compliment, though.
Yeah, no, that was a nice compliment, yeah.
How did you get cast for this part? You were in Anthony Zerbe's team of bad guys there.
Yeah, you know, I don't even remember. I auditioned, you know.
Was this the 60s?
No, 70s. This is like 1970.
No, I'm kidding.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah, you're blinking, here we are, right?
No, here we are, I know.
Yeah.
You know, Katharine Hepburn, did you have scenes with her too?
I did have one scene, not directly. It was with Kate and the Duke, and there was an Indian boy actor that they had with them in the show. We were moving this nitroglycerin to another location because we were going to rob the U.S. Treasury with it. And he's about to ambush us.
Meet your maker!
They're in the rocks with Kate, and she's shooting or ready to shoot.
You got the gun, but you ain't got the know-how to use it.
So I had this scene. She was saying something, and then the Duke had this little monologue, maybe about 15 lines or something. And then I had my response. So he started to go through his monologue. I was going to say my lines, and the director said, "Paul, why didn't you say lines?" I said, "Well, because you know, I didn't want to cut him off because he hadn't said all of his lines, and I didn't, you know." He says, "Nobody's gonna cut me off. I can say whatever I want. You got it, kid?" I said, "Well, okay, sir." And so we did it again, and that was the closest I got to Kate in that scene. But you know, the Duke, from my impression of him, was that if you did your stuff and you were right on top of it, he was your best buddy. But if you were like a slack or you weren't prepared, he could get on your case. Yeah. So I think he was a really proud man, and I really love. You know, I've got a little secret here. I never liked the Duke as an actor myself, but then when I saw Rooster Cogburn and the Lady, I thought, and I had seen some of his movies, I thought it was the best acting he's ever done in Rooster Cogburn and the Lady. He was so natural, because I always thought he was so stiff, but he was so natural, and he was so funny, and he was so charming, and he was so easygoing, and I never thought that he had that in him, and I was really impressed.
Well, the story and the relationship that they had, it was like Bogart and Kate in African Queen.
Exactly right.
Their charisma came across on screen, and I thought it worked really well.
To whom do you think you are talking, Marshal?
You is to whom I think I'm talking, sister.
John Wayne and Katharine Hepburn. They were never meant for each other, but here they are.
They were always like this. I mean, in a
Well,
fun
she was a Democrat and he was a Republican.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, it seemed like in a fun way. I don't know if it was really for real, you know, that Democratic.
Well, it was part of their characters in the film, too.
Right. And, you know, she would be sitting, you know, on the hood of a truck going, you know, like 100 feet down to the set where they were shooting, and Hal Wallace was having heart attacks because, you know, she was such a daredevil, and she was really, you know, sort of full of piss and vinegar, so to speak.
Well, a classic
Yeah, a
lady,
classic
too.
lady.
Well, and he had won the Oscar for playing that character.
Yeah,
and this was the sequel.
Exactly right.
Hallelujah!
Marshal Cogburn, you're in a sorry state.
No man alive likes to be called high-smelling and low-down.
Yeah, I enjoyed the movie. Like I said, I enjoyed his acting more than anything else.
After discovering an awareness of him, working with him, did you go back and look at his earlier films and give him a second chance?
No, because I didn't need to, because as I was growing up and I saw some of his acting, I thought he was always kind of, like I said, sort of reserved in some kind of a way. But in Rooster Cogburn, he was just, to me, like a brilliant actor. So, and yeah, I'm a theater actor, so, you know, I may be more critical than other people. I don't know.
Well, it's a different skill set.
Right, exactly.
And you're still very involved with the Met Theater, which was founded by Tim Scott and Jimmy Gammon years
Exactly.
ago, and you've been part of that for as long as I can remember.
Yeah, I'm one of the co-founders with Tim.
I think you stole the movie Joe Kidd from everybody that was in it. You had this cockiness, this look and comedic quality about you. You were part of the bounty hunter group led by Robert Duvall. Donnie Stroud was a wild man, as he normally is in that. And you had funny comments and reactions, and that was John Sturges, who had done The Magnificent Seven, and there toward the end of his career with Clint and Joe Kidd. A really
I think he did
good
Gunfight
film.
at OK Corral too, did he not?
Yes, he did. So working with Clint and Sturges, what was that like?
You know, when you're working with great actors like Robert Duvall, you know, it's the things that I remember mostly is about their acting and the interaction that these actors have.
You want Louis Jama? I told you the deal, $500, and I don't care who pulls the trigger on it. The price will be $1,000.
I remember just the funny things, like Running Deer was this Indian. We were shooting that up in Lone Pine and Big Pine and up in Mammoth, and you know, this was like in 73, 71. We just had so much fun. Like Bobby Duvall is a total cut up, and we were on this mountain. We're on this might be a little maybe too much off color for.
Oh, we love
for here.
that.
Do you really? Well, Clint was riding his horse in the Alabama hills up there, and it was, I don't know if you know how windy it can get up in the high desert, but it can really get windy. And Clint he had to cinch his hat up, you know. And the whole crew was there, and he's walking his horse, and I mean, Clint is a beautiful rider, you know, and that riding a beautiful horse, and the whole crew and actors are waiting for him to do this shot. Well, it's blowing so hard, the gust must be about 70, 80 miles an hour. And everything was just, people were holding down stuff and shiny boards and everything else. And the Wranglers had their hats just, everybody had their hats just pulled down like this. And Bobby's waiting, and Bobby is a real cut-up. I don't know if anyone has ever worked with Bobby that's here, but all of a sudden, Bobby cuts the biggest fart you've ever heard, and in front of the Wrangler's hat just blew off at the same time like this. And Bobby said, "God darn it, blew his bloody brains out." And of course, the director and the AD looked over because, you know, everybody was laughing. It ruined the whole shot. So Clint got really, you know, what's going on? Well, they tried to make it look like something else happened. It wasn't Bobby that did it. And this guy running deer, this Indian, was so sweet. He was so nice. You know, he would do he was a stunt guy, but he had like special business and stuff. And when we'd be around somewhere, we'd be shooting, we'd be like by the set. They were always looking for him. They could never find him. But we could find him because we'd hear psst, 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 and we'd look around, and there was running deer, and he had this bag. And he says, "Guys, come over here, come over here." And we look in there, he opened his bag. It was full of marijuana buds, about this long. And, you know, you want one? Oh, yeah, you want one? Yeah. You know, Stroud and the Cloud. Yeah. Call him Stroud the Cloud because he's always, you know. So we went from there to Old Tucson, like about 6 weeks later. And nobody could find running deer. And what had happened, apparently, was that running deer used to cook for himself. So we were in this, whatever it was, Howard Johnson or wherever we were staying. And apparently we'd heard that he used to take his hibachi and he burnt the hibachi, he burnt the carpet and the floor. So he left town because he didn't want to pay for it. And people were asking, well, where's running? Nobody's seen running there, and we're already now about 2 weeks into Old Tucson. And all of a sudden we hear psst, psst. And sure enough, it's running deer with another bag. And we don't know if this guy was a plant or if they were trying to set people up or whatever, but he was a real sweet guy, and those are the kinds of stories that I remember, and some more off-color ones than that. But when we shot in Old Tucson, Paul Newman was shooting Judge Roy Bean. Mm-hmm. So Paul Newman we were staying in the same motel, and it was time of I think the Super Bowl, and everybody had bets going, and James Wainwright and and the Cloud, they had big money on it, but what happened was Clint actually won the pool, and that was their last day there. They were going to be flying out. We were all down there in the bar watching, and they were leaving, and the car was waiting for him, and they left this card for Clint. And somebody said, like, I don't know, open the card, Clint. And Paul Newman said, well, what do they say? Because they lost so much money. Their message to Clint was, Clint, we just want to tell you to go F you yourself. You know? And Clint says, that's what I love about these guys. They're such nice guys. But see a little too much. But that's the kind of stuff that goes on the sets.
Well, on the set of Richard Matheson's I Am Legend, which was the second version of his film, mm-hmm. of his novel, mm-hmm. Omega Man with Chuck Heston, Anthony Zerbe again.
Right.
It seems like the greatest stuntmen around worked on that film. I think Joe Canutt was the coordinator. Tap mm-hmm. Canutt was there, who mm-hmm. I guess Joe had doubled Chuck in so many mm-hmm. films, but that was a wonderful movie. Walter Seltzer.
Walter Seltzer.
Walter
yes,
Seltzer produced the
Walter's
Omega Man.
A really nice man.
Yes, he really was. But that movie holds up. That's a great film.
Yeah, I've got a little story there. I mean, Chuck is gone too now, but Mr. Heston was so busy that when I did my scenes with him, the script girl would hold a mop, like a little higher, the same height as Chuck Heston. So I did all my close-ups to the mop, and she would read. In those days, you know, we were so enamored of Charlton Heston because he had a cell phone, and the cell phone was like the size of a battery, you know. And he had a guy carry it because, you know, you're walking around like this, and he would just give him and he was talking to, you know, Reagan all the time. Because Chuck was head of the Screen Actors Guild and Reagan was the governor. But Charlton Heston was, I really enjoyed him. I mean, I didn't really enjoy his politics that much, but I really enjoyed his personality. He was like a straight shooter, and he really cared, you know, he was interested in what you had to say. And I had done a movie just before the Omega Man called The Losers, directed by Jack Starrett. I don't know if you remember Jack Starrett. Bill Smith was one of the stars, and we were in the Philippines, and it was about 5 Hells Angels in Cambodia rescuing a CIA agent taking on the whole Red Chinese Army. And this guy, Joe Solomon, as a matter of fact, he made the cover of Time magazine, and the caption was his face with Joe Solomon, last of the Schlockmeisters. And actually, The Losers never played in this country, but we worked, I mean, tirelessly on the movie, and it's a pretty solid little movie. And Joe Solomon hadn't paid us for the first 3 weeks. And so Bill Smith says, we're on strike, you know. And so Joe, I guess the agencies representing the different actors called, called Solomon, and he came out. And so they guaranteed us, and the agent said, yeah, they have paid up. But when we finished the movie, we had maybe all about 80 or 90 or 100 hours in overtime and golden time. So when I worked on the Omega Man, I talked to Chuck I said, Chuck, you know, this is a union movie, and we haven't got paid, so I think I made triple my wages on that movie that Chuck took care of. No wonder I liked him so much.
Yeah,
right?
that's great.
And so, but yeah, he was a nice guy. I did another movie with him called Solar Crisis. I don't know if you know about that.
I don't
one.
know that.
Peter Boyle, a lot of great actors in it too.
And Chuck kept going back and forth between films and theater. He also did that.
Yes, he did. Yeah. He was nice. I liked him.
Well, we've enjoyed, Paul, you being here, hearing these stories.
Well,
and,
thank you.
Thank you
for having me.
Thank you.